Hey YouTube, so in previous videos we've developed programs that have a sequential aspect to them. The statements were executed from the first statement in the main function till the last one in somewhat like a straight line. Most of the time this is not what we want to do. So let's say we want to ask a user to input an integer x between 0 and 10. If the user inputs -1 or 100 or any number out of that range, we would prompt the user to enter a different value. Afterwards, we would like to print, for example, hello world x number of times. With what we know so far, this can't be done. Fortunately, C++ provides control flow statements which allow us to control the path that the program follows. So in this video, we will start by talking about conditionals. A conditional statement is a statement that lets a program choose a path to follow based on a certain expression. So probably one of the most basic conditional branches is the if statement, and it goes something like this: if, and here we enter some expression which returns true or false value, and if the value is true we would do statements if true, else we would do other statements. So let's do a quick example. Start just by including the IO stream. And let's say we take an input from the user. And let's make it an integer. And if, let's say we want to see if x is greater than or equal 0. We would print that it's greater than or equal 0. And I'll just copy it, and else it's less than 0. Okay, and we have to have the semicolon, and let's return 0, and let's run our program. So it asks me to enter a value. I'll just say 10, and the output is as expected. Let's run again, and let's say -9, and it tells me that the number is less than 0, so as expected. Note that in case you have only one statement under the if and under the else, you would only need one. However, if you have multiple statements, then curly braces is important. So let's say here without curly braces, and here I'll add a different statement. So your number is x, and I'll run the program. So you see it ran correctly. So this is 20 greater than 0, and let's say -9. You can see that it works. However, if I remove these curly braces, then sorry, I forgot to save. If then it would only run this one here, So if I press 20, for example, you can see it ran both statements here, and let's say I include this below the statement here, you can see that my program won't run. Now let's take a different example. Let's say you would like to find the max between two numbers. So I'll just define an integer max, and or I'll define x, for example, is 10 and y, let's say, is -5, and we write if x is greater than y, then we'd set max as x because it becomes the maximum. Otherwise, code snippets, we set max to y, and now let's print out our max value. So here we have it as 0, but since x is greater than y in this case, max should become equal to x, which is 10. And if we run the program, you can see here that it outputs a value 10. Let's fix this up a bit. And you can see here that outputs 10, and as we change these, so let's say -10, you can see here that the maximum is -5, so it will set max to y. In this case, when we want to assign a value based on a condition, and if this condition was like quite small, it would be better to use the conditional operator, which is something like this. So let's remove this and give a quick example. So I will set max equal to, and here I would write my condition first, so x greater than y, and I ask myself this question, and then I write, if it's true, set max to x, otherwise set max to y. And this basically does the same thing as before, and if I run my program, you can see it's the same. And now let's make it a true statement, true expression, and you can see here it sets the value to 10. One thing you can do with if statements is that you can branch them. So in this example here, I branched some if statements. You can see first I check if x is less than or equal to 10. Then if that is true, then I check if x is less than or equal to 5. And if that is true, then I check if x is less than or equal to 0. And this is quite a simple one, but you can see it's getting too much. So if I have value of x, it should print this, and this is false. This expression here is false, so it should print greater than 0. So let's run the code, and you can see here that it says less than or equal to 10, less than or equal to 5, greater than 0, and you can like go crazy with your branching. So a different type of conditional branch is the switch statement, and this switch statement has like a certain use case. So in cases where we have like chained if-else statements with equality expressions and a single variable, it is somewhat best to use switch operators. So how a switch operator works is that we write switch, and then you can see the expression, and here the expression means the variable we want to check. So let's, for example, do an integer x, and we would define it as 3, and we would write inside here x, and the case is the value that we want to compare it to. So let's say if x equal 1, then let's say std cout and x is 1, and we can do different cases. Let's say 2, and let's say here the third one 3. So let me just fix this up really quick, and we can write here 2, 3, x is 3, and we have this default which I'll explain now. Let's write 3, and let's run the program. Oh, sorry. Okay, and you can see here it printed out x is 3. So what's happening is that switch is comparing x with these cases here, and the default case, let's say, is the one which doesn't satisfy either of the cases. You can have as many cases as you want, so let's go through the cases we have here. So I'm gonna say 1, for example. The x is 1, I'll just write 5, and it should go to the default case as you see here. So what's happening is it's comparing these and just doing whatever is inside the case. The break here is somewhat needed, depends on your application of course, because without it it won't stop. So for example, let's remove the break here to show you what I mean. A break in the default case is usually not needed if you put it at the end. Usually any case is not needed if you put the case at the end. And the default is optional, by the way. So let's change the value to 1, for example. And you can see here it went to this case and then printed out everything else. So if I go to 2, it doesn't satisfy this case, so it skips it. It goes here, it satisfies this case, so it prints this and continues. So we need a break to tell the switch that okay, we're done. So now let's develop a quick example where we take two numbers to, let's say, floats num1 and num2, and let's take in an operator as a character, and we would just tell the user to enter cout enter number, and of course we need here semicolon, and just copy this and enter a number 2, and let's say op. I assume that the user will enter the correct operator, so plus, minus, multiplication, division, and now let's perform these operations. So switch, and our condition will be on the up, and let's write in case it was plus, then cout requested value is and let's just copy these cases, and let's add a break here so that it doesn't flow to the other cases. The order of the case usually doesn't matter depending on your application and how you use the breaks. So let's add a default case here, and we would write that it's an invalid operator. And okay, so this is our program. Let's run it. So it tells me to enter a number. I'd say, for example, 5.5, another number, let's say 4.5, and I'll use the addition, and you can see the value is as expected.